To say Pokemon Go is a popular app is an understatement. In a little less than 2 months since its July 6, 2016 release, it's been downloaded over 100 million times worldwide, and reports reveal people spent more time playing the app than browsing Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram after its launch. The game has generated over $250 million in revenue with in-app purchases, roughly $5.7 million per day. But that pales in comparison to its forecasted earnings of $179 billion over the next decade through ad revenue. Long before Pokemon Go existed, though, Pokemon was still a massive phenomenon. Invented by Satoshi Tajiri around 1989, when the original Nintendo Game Boy released in Japan and North America, the game has players collecting Pokemon species and training them to battle other Pokemon. 7 years before, in 1982, Tajiri had created a video game fanzine called Game Freak. In 1987, he and the magazine contributors began developing video games. And on April 26, 1989, Game Freak became a full-fledged game developer. The company partnered with Nintendo in 1995, and on February 27, 1996, Pokémonster Aka and Midori were released in Japan for the Game Boy, marking the beginning of a multi-billion-dollar franchise that is still enjoyed 20 years later and has proven to be the second most profitable video game-based franchise after Mario. It's a golden IP, so, not surprisingly, Hollywood decided to go out and capture that legendary beast. And speaking of legendary, on April 14th, 2016, reports broke that Legendary Pictures, Warner Brothers, and Sony were vying for the rights to bring Pokemon to the big screen. A fierce bidding war ensued, but, like a Pokemon battle, only one could emerge as regional champion. News of Legendary Pictures' victory came about on July 20th, 2016, 2 weeks after Pokemon Go's launch. Fans were abuzz. Satoshi, aka Ash Ketchum, and his friends' adventures have been the anime's plot since 1997, and a live-action retelling could evoke powerful nostalgia in the adult fans. That is, if Hollywood had decided to adapt that story into a film. The plot that will get big screen treatment is based not on the core series story, but a spin-off game, released only in Japan 6 months ago. Meitante Pikachu, Shinkonbi Tanjou, or Great Detective Pikachu, Birth of a New Duo, was released on February 3rd, 2016 in Japan for the Nintendo 3DS. In the game, a talking Pikachu teams up with a boy named Tim Goodman to solve mysteries in the city centered around Pokemon, which involves finding simple clues and talking to witnesses. All the while, Detective Pikachu and Tim are trying to figure out what happened to Harry Goodman, who is Pikachu's former crime-solving partner and Tim's dad. This is not Ash Ketchum's Pikachu, but an entirely different one. He can't use electric attacks, has a deep voice, drinks coffee, and flirts with women. The game is roughly 5 hours long, and the ending prepares players for a sequel. According to Famitsu magazine, Great Detective Pikachu only sold 5,471 physical units and 21,749 eShop units in February, coming in at 23rd place out of 29 titles. There's been no word on localizing it outside Japan. Guardians of the Galaxy's Nicole Perlman will write the script, alongside Gravity Falls' Alex Hirsch. Legendary Pictures is planning to start filming in 2017, and they're keeping the plot details under wraps. I already have a few questions. First, Legendary is wanting to keep the plot a secret? How? They've announced that it's a screen version of Great Detective Pikachu, a title that's available to the public. Maybe they're thinking people aren't familiar with the game because it's only sold in Japan and untranslated. Even if they modify the caper scenarios to throw people off, the events will presumably center around Detective Pikachu and him searching for Harry Goodman. Second, why did Hollywood pick Great Detective Pikachu as its inspiration material? It's a spin-off game, like Pokemon Snap and Hey You Pikachu. At the time of Legendary's reveal to the public, the game had only been out for a little over 5 months. Aside from containing a few Pokemon, it doesn't feel like a Pokemon game, and should not be the ambassador for the franchise entering the film realm. A screenplay based on the main games would be far more cinematic, not to mention profitable. Some people may say the core games don't have much narrative for a screenplay, or audiences unfamiliar with Pokemon might not understand the core story, but remember, the anime, which has aired since 1997, created a cognitive tale based on the main games. It also educates the audience along the way about the Pokemon world, so a film should have no problem doing the same. Maybe Hollywood is wanting to stay away from the core series to avoid showing Pokemon battles or Pikachu using electric attacks. Even though the Great Detective Pikachu game does have a linear storyline that outwardly appears to make it an easy cinematic choice, the majority of the 5-hour-long gameplay centers around talking to eyewitnesses and reading clues in a notebook. It's up in the air at which demographic it'll be aimed. Even though a majority of Pokemon fans are adults who grew up with it, it's still widely considered a kid's property. Whether the writers gear the movie at children, or turn it into a film noir, similar to Who Framed Roger Rabbit, has yet to be seen, but odds are Hollywood will make it a kids' film, so as not to alienate the younger age groups. Even so, most kids will probably want to see something that mirrors the TV series, not a game many of them haven't played. Because it's live action, the Pokemon will be brought to life via CGI, but don't be expecting Joe Lettieri quality or Andy Serkis motion capture. Okay, time to get down to brass tacks. Will people want to watch this? Certainly, it's the first Hollywood Pokemon film, and the first live-action Nintendo IP movie since 1993's Super Mario Bros. With Pokemon Go only 2 weeks into its massive release, news of a live-action Pokemon movie was icing on the proverbial cake. Alas, by the time the movie opens in 2018, Pokemon Go will no longer be the hot trend that it is now, and people may not be as excited for a Detective Pikachu movie. Additionally, not as many people know about the Great Detective Pikachu game as they do the Pokemon television series. What will critics think about it? Overall, many will say it has its charming moments, but is generally underwhelming and confusing. Some will get a few chuckles from the jokes. Audience reaction will be mixed. Was it a good idea to make this movie? If it does follow its namesake game's narrative, not really. Of all the Pokemon game choices out there, a 6-month-old, Japan-exclusive spin-off was selected. The movie might prompt Nintendo to distribute the game in other countries. If not, only a limited number of folks will have had the chance to play it. The Chronicles of Ash and Pikachu are a proven cash cow. Slapping Pikachu on something doesn't necessarily mean it'll make gold, as we've seen with Great Detective Pikachu's low sales. Video game movies, statistically, do not perform well at the box office. If Legendary wishes to break that video game movie stigma, they need to bring a strong contender to the screen, not a title that's widely unknown to potential audiences and doesn't follow Pokemon tradition. Detective Pikachu can't use electric attacks, and Tim interrogates people. How will this work when Pokemon is supposed to be synonymous with action? What will be the lasting impression? The whole concept of this movie brings to mind a Russian proverb. The marvel is not that the bear dances well, but that the bear dances at all. Ever since 1993, this has been Hollywood's mindset for adapting games into film. They don't care about the quality and writing because they believe people will see the flicks, simply because they're game adaptations. But, as we know, the novelty of being based on a game alone is not a guarantee people will enjoy the flicks. If anything, it makes audiences leery. Even though Pokemon is a multi-billion-dollar franchise, Legendary Pictures should not throw caution to the wind and assume everyone will clamor to Detective Pikachu in record numbers, simply because there's a Pikachu in it. The heartfelt tale of Ash and his electric mouse was what drew people into the Pokemon story in droves, not Tim Goodman trying to find an Apom that stole a necklace. Searching for Pokemon and winning tournaments on a small monochromatic screen was what sparked the phenomenon that has flourished for 20 years and spawns nearly 60 other games, not a minor puzzle game that has the player running back and forth on a screen collecting clues. If Hollywood wants to expose more people to the world of Pokemon, they need to pick something more universally loved and with better cinematic potential. Could you imagine if Hollywood finally made a Legend of Zelda movie, but instead of retelling Link's quest through Hyrule to save Princess Zelda, it was an adaptation of Ripe and Tingle's Balloon Trip of Love? It's taken this long for Hollywood to finally see the commercial promise of Pokemon, and for Nintendo to want to see their IP brought to life again through live action. But already, Hollywood is making questionable decisions. Just as the Great Detective Pikachu game is set for a sequel, Legendary is likely planning to follow suit with their movie. At the very least, the studio has multiple Pokemon films planned. There had been definitive plans for a Super Mario Bros. Movie sequel, but due to its dismal box office performance, the idea was scrapped. Starting off with Detective Pikachu is a potentially risky move. While it's not a horrible game, it doesn't represent the structure, narrative, and monetary potential of the core series Pokemon world. Because Legendary has chosen this as its dive into Pokemon, it shows they are out of touch with what the fans want, meaning studio executives are making the decisions. If that's what's going on, Legendary's deal could prove to be a costly mistake, as the finished film will play it safe and be by the numbers. If reception isn't good, Nintendo may, once again, forbid Hollywood from adapting their IP, just as they've done for 23 years since the Super Mario Bros. Movie. We'll never see a live-action core story Pokemon film if that happens. The Detective Pikachu movie will have its good moments, but even while watching it, fans, in the back of their minds, will still be yearning to hear a live-action Ash utter those 4 evocative words. I choose you, Pikachu. Alright, what's the next movie? What? Oh. Someone's got a gripe about it, and that someone is Marplotic.